2 Samuel 1. And it came to pass, after the death of Saul, when David returned from the defeat of the Amalekites, that he stayed 2 days in Ziklag. On the 3rd day a man came from Saul's camp, his clothes torn and with dirt on his head. And when he came to David, he fell to the ground and bowed down. And David said to him, "Where do you come from?" And he said to him, "I have escaped from the camp of Israel." And David said to him, "How is that there? I beg you, tell me." And he answered him, "The people fled from the battle, and many of the people fell and died, just as Saul and Jonathan his son were slain." And David said to the young man who brought him the news, "How do you know that Saul and Jonathan his son were killed?" Then said the young man who brought him the news, "I happened to come to Mount Gilboa, and behold, Saul was leaning on his spear, and behold, the chariots and the cavalry pressed him. And looking behind him, he saw me, and called me, and I said, 'Here I am.' And he said to me, 'Who are you?' And I said to him, 'I am an Amalekite.' Then he said to me, 'I beg you, fall on me, and kill me, because anguish has surrounded me, for all my life is still in me.' So I rushed at him and killed him, because I knew I would not live after his fall, and I took the crown that was on his head and the bracelet that was on his arm, and I brought them here to my lord." Then David took hold of his garments, and tore them, so did all the men that were with him. And they mourned, and wept, and fasted until evening for Saul, and for Jonathan his son, and for the people of the Lord, and for the house of Israel, because they had fallen by the sword. Then David said to the young man who brought him the news, "Where are you from?" And he said, "I am the son of a foreigner, an Amalekite." And David said to him, "How are you not afraid to stretch out your hand to kill the Lord's anointed?" Then David called one of the young men, and said, "Arise, and fall upon him." And he smote him, and he died. For David had said unto him, "Thy blood be upon thy head, for thy own mouth hath testified against thee, saying, I have slain the Lord's anointed." And David lamented to Saul and Jonathan his son with this lamentation. He said to teach the children of Judah how to use the bow. Behold, it is written in the book of Jasher, "Ah, ornament of Israel! In your high places he was wounded, how the mighty fell. Tell it not in Gath, publish it not in the streets of Ashkelon, lest the daughters of the Philistines rejoice, lest the daughters of the uncircumcised leap for joy. You mountains of Gilboa, let neither dew nor rain fall on you, nor be there fields of heave offerings, for there the shield of the mighty has been thrown down contemptuously, the shield of Saul, as if it had not been anointed with oil. From the blood of the slain, from the fat of the mighty, Jonathan's bow never turned back, nor did Saul's sword return empty." Saul and Jonathan, so loved and cherished in his life, were not separated even in his death. They were swifter than eagles, stronger than lions. You daughters of Israel, weep for Saul, who clothed you in scarlet and delights, who made you wear gold ornaments on your garments. How the mighty fell in the midst of the battle. Jonathan in thy high places was slain. I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan, how kind you were to me. Your love was more wonderful to me than the love of women. How the mighty have fallen, and the weapons of war perished. 2 Samuel 2. And it came to pass after this, that David inquired of the Lord, saying, Shall I go up into any of the cities of Judah? And the Lord said unto him, Go up. And David said, Whither shall I go up? And he said, To Hebron. And David went up there, and also his 2 wives, Ahinoam the Jezreelite, and Abigail, the wife of Nabal the Carmelite. David also brought up the men that were with him, each one with his household, and they dwelt in the cities of Hebron. Then the men of Judah came, and there they anointed David king over the house of Judah. And they told David, saying, The men of Jabesh Gilead were they that buried Saul. Then David sent messengers to the men of Jabesh Gilead, to say to them, Blessed are you of the Lord, who have shown such kindness to your master Saul, and buried him. Now therefore, the Lord deal with you in kindness and faithfulness, and I also will do you this good, because you have done this. Now therefore let your hands be strong, and be ye mighty men, for your lord Saul is dead, and the house of Judah also anointed me their king. But Abner, son of Ner, captain of Saul's army, took Ishbosheth, Saul's son, and brought him over to Mahanaim. And he made him king over Gilead, and over the Asherites, and over Jezreel, and over Ephraim, and over Benjamin, and over all Israel. 40 years old was Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, when he began to reign over Israel, and he reigned 2 years, but the house of Judah followed David. And the number of days that David reigned in Hebron over the house of Judah was 7 years and 6 months. Then Abner the son of Ner went out with the servants of Ishbosheth the son of Saul from Mahanaim to Gibeon. And Joab the son of Zeruiah, and the servants of David, went out and met one another by the pool of Gibeon, and they stopped on this side of the pool, and the others on the other side of the pool. And Abner said to Joab, "Let the young men rise, and let them play before us." And Joab said, "Rise up." Then they arose and passed over, 12 of Benjamin by number, from Ishbosheth, Saul's son, and 12 of David's servants. And each one seized the head of the other, thrust his sword into his side, and they fell together. Therefore that place was called Helkath Hazurim, which is by Gibeon. And there followed that day a fierce battle, but Abner and the men of Israel were smitten before David's servants. And the 3 sons of Zeruiah were there, Joab, Abishai, and Asahel, and Asahel was swift of foot, like the gazelles of the field. And Asahel pursued Abner, and he did not turn from behind Abner, either to the right or to the left. And Abner, looking back, asked, "Art thou Asahel?" And he said, "I am." Then Abner said to him, "Turn aside to the right or to the left, and take hold of one of the young men, and take his spoil." But Asahel would not stray from behind him. Then Abner said again to Asahel, "Get behind me, why should I strike you down and bring you to the ground? And how could I lift up my face to Joab your brother?" But, not wanting him to go astray, Abner smote him with the point of the spear through the 5th rib, and the spear came out from behind him, and he fell there, and died on the same spot. And it came to pass, that all who came to the place where Asahel fell and died, stopped. But Joab and Abishai pursued Abner, and the sun went down, and they came to the hill of Ammah, which is before Giah, by the way of the desert of Gibeon. And the children of Benjamin gathered themselves together behind Abner, and they made a company, and they stood on the top of a hill. Then Abner called to Joab, and said, "Will the sword consume forever? Do you not know that in the end there will be bitterness? And how long will you not tell the people to stop persecuting their brothers?" And Joab said, "As God lives, if you had not spoken, not until morning would the people have stopped, each one, from pursuing his brother." Then Joab blew the horn, and all the people stopped, and they pursued Israel no more, neither did they fight any more. And Abner and his men walked all that night in the plain, and, crossing the Jordan, they walked through all Bitram, and came to Mahanaim. Joab also returned from pursuing Abner, and gathered all the people together, and of David's servants lacked 19 men, and Asahel. But the servants of David smote from among those of Benjamin, and from among the men of Abner, 360 men, who were slain there. And they lifted up Asahel, and buried him in his father's tomb, which was in Bethlehem. And Joab and his men journeyed all that night, and day dawned for them in Hebron. 2 Samuel 3. And there was a long war between the house of Saul and the house of David, but David was getting stronger, but those of the house of Saul were getting weaker. And to David were born children in Hebron, and Amnon his firstborn was from Ahinoam the Jezreelite. And his second, Chileab, by Abigail, wife of Nabal the Carmelite, and the third Absalom, son of Maacah, daughter of Talmai, king of Geshur. And the fourth, Adonijah, son of Haggith, and the fifth, Shephatiah, son of Abdul. And the sixth, Ithream, of Eglah, also David's wife. These were born to David in Hebron. And when there was war between the house of Saul and the house of David, it came to pass that Abner became mighty in the house of Saul. And Saul had a concubine, whose name was Rizpah, daughter of Aiah. And Ishbosheth said to Abner, "Why have you taken my father's concubine?" Then Abner was very angry at the words of Ishbosheth, and said, "Am I a dog's head, belonging to Judah? Even today I do kindness to the house of Saul, your father, to his brothers, and to his friends, and I did not deliver you into the hand of David, and today you seek a reason to argue with me because of the wickedness of a woman. God do so to Abner, and more also, if, as the Lord swore to David, I do not do so to him, transferring the kingdom from the house of Saul, and confirming the throne of David over Israel, and over Judah, from Dan to Beersheba." And no words could he answer Abner, because he feared him. Then Abner sent messengers to David from his side, saying, Whose land is it? And he said more, Make your covenant with me, and behold, my hand will be with you to return all Israel to you. And David said, Well, I will make an agreement with you, but one thing I ask of you, you will not see my face, if you do not first bring me Michal, daughter of Saul, when you come to see my face. And David sent messengers to Ishbosheth, Saul's son, saying, Give me my wife Michal, whom I married for 100 foreskins of the Philistines. And he sent Ishbosheth, and took her from her husband, to Paltiel, the son of Laish. And her husband went with her, walking and weeping after her, as far as Boram. Then Abner said to him, Go away, now return. And he came back. And Abner spoke with the elders of Israel, saying, For a long time you sought that David should reign over you. Do it now therefore, for the Lord spake unto David, saying, By the hand of David my servant will I deliver my people out of the hand of the Philistines, and out of the hand of all their enemies. And Abner also spoke to those of Benjamin, and Abner also went to tell those of David in Hebron all that was good in the eyes of Israel and in the eyes of all the house of Benjamin. And Abner went to David at Hebron, and 20 men with him, and David made Abner and the men with him a feast. Then Abner said to David, I will arise and go and gather all Israel to my lord the king, to make an agreement with you, and thou shalt reign over all that thy soul desires. So David sent Abner away, and he went in peace. And behold, the servants of David and Joab came from a battle, and they had great spoil with them, and Abner was not with David in Hebron, because he had sent him away, and had gone in peace. When Joab came, and all the host that was with him, they told Joab, saying, Abner the son of Ner came to the king, and sent him away, and went in peace. Then Joab went to the king, and said, What have you done? Behold, Abner came to you, why then did you dismiss him, so that it could be so freely? Thou knowest Abner the son of Ner, who came to deceive thee, and to know thy going out and thy coming in, and to understand all that thou doest. And Joab, departing from David, sent messengers after Abner, and they brought him back from the well of Sirah, without David knowing it. So when Abner returned to Hebron, Joab took him aside to the entrance of the gate, to speak with him in secret, and he smote him there by the 5th rib, and he died, because of the blood of Asahel his brother. When David heard it, he said, I and my kingdom are innocent before the Lord forever from the blood of Abner the son of Ner. Let it fall on the head of Joab and on all his father's house, and never be lacking in the house of Joab who has a discharge, or who is a leper, or who holds a staff, or who falls by the sword, or who lacks bread. So Joab and Abishai his brother killed Abner, because he killed Asahel his brother in the battle at Gibeon. So David said to Joab and to all the people that were with him, Rend your clothes, and gird yourselves with sackcloth, and go wailing before Abner. And King David was following the bier. And when he was burying Abner in Hebron, the king lifted up his voice, and wept at Abner's grave, and wept all the people. And the king, mourning Abner, said, Shall Abner die as the villain dies? Your hands were not bound, nor were your feet burdened with fetters, but you fell like those who fall before the sons of wickedness. Then all the people wept much more for him. Then all the people came to make David eat bread, while it was still day, but David swore, saying, So may God do to me, and more if I taste bread or anything before the sun goes down. What all the people understood, seemed good in their eyes, just as everything the king did was good in the eyes of all the people. And all the people and all Israel understood that very day that it had not proceeded from the king to slay Abner the son of Ner. Then said the king unto his servants, Know ye not that a prince and a great man have fallen in Israel this day? That I am weak today, though anointed king, these men, sons of Zeruiah, are tougher than I am, the Lord will repay the evildoer according to his iniquity. 2 Samuel 4. When Saul's son heard that Abner had died at Hebron, his hands were slackened, and all Israel were astonished. And Saul's son had 2 men captains of troops, and it was the name of the one Baanah, and the name of the other Rechab, children of Rimmon the Beerothite, of the children of Benjamin, for Beeroth also was reputed to be Benjamin. And the Beerothites had fled to Githaim, and there they have sojourned to this day. And Jonathan, Saul's son, had a son that was crippled in both feet, He was 5 years old when the news of Saul and Jonathan came from Jezreel, and his nurse took him and fled. And it came to pass, as she hastened to flee, that he fell, and was lame, and his name was Mephibosheth. And the sons of Rimmon the Beerothite, Rehab and Baanah, went and entered the house of Ishbosheth in the greatest heat of the day, while he was lying down to sleep, at noon. And there they entered into the middle of the house, as if coming for wheat, and they smote him in the 5th rib, and Rechab and Baanah his brother escaped. For they entered his house, while he was lying on his bed, in his room, and struck him, and killed him, and cut off his head, and, taking his head, they walked all night across the plain. And they brought the head of Ishbosheth to David to Hebron, and said to the king, Here is the head of Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, your enemy, who sought your death. So the Lord avenged my lord the king this day, of Saul and of his seed. But David answering Rechab and Baanah his brother, the sons of Rimmon the Beerothite, said to them, As the Lord lives, who redeemed my soul out of all trouble. If he who brought me good news, saying, Behold, Saul is dead, but in his eyes it seemed to be like one bringing good news, I immediately took hold of him and killed him at Ziklag, thinking that I have this reward. How much more ungodly men, who slew a righteous man in his house, on his bed? Now therefore, should I not require his blood at your hands, and cut you off from the land? And David commanded his young men to kill them, and they cut off their feet and hands, and hung them over the pool of Hebron, but they took the head of Ishbosheth and buried it in Abner's tomb in Hebron. 2 Samuel 5. Then all the tribes of Israel came to David in Hebron, and they spoke, saying, Here we are your bone and your flesh. And also in former times, when Saul was still king over us, you were the one who went out and brought in Israel, and the Lord also said to you, You will shepherd my people Israel, and you will be prince over Israel. So all the elders of Israel came to the king to Hebron, and King David made an agreement with them in Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed David king over Israel. 30 years old was David when he began to reign, 40 years he reigned. In Hebron he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months, and in Jerusalem he reigned 33 years over all Israel and Judah. And the king went with his men to Jerusalem against the Jebusites who dwelt in that land, and they spoke to David, saying, Thou shalt not enter hither, for the blind and the lame shall drive thee away, meaning, David shall not enter hither. But David took the stronghold of Zion, this is the city of David. For David said on that day, Whoever smites the Jebusites, let him go up to the canal and smite the lame and the blind, whom the soul of David hates. Therefore it is said, Neither the blind nor the lame shall enter this house. So David dwelt in the stronghold, and called it the city of David, and David was building round about, from Millo inward. And David grew and grew more and more, because the Lord God of hosts was with him. And Hiram king of Tyre sent messengers to David, and cedar trees, and carpenters, and masons, who built David a house. And David understood that the Lord had confirmed him king over Israel, and that he had exalted his kingdom for the sake of his people. And David took more concubines and women from Jerusalem, after he came from Hebron, and more sons and daughters were born to David. And these are the names of those born to him in Jerusalem, Shammua, and Shobab, and Nathan, and Solomon, and Abar, and Elishua, and Nepheg, and Japhia, and Elisama, and Eliada, and Eliphalet. When the Philistines heard that they had anointed David king over Israel, all the Philistines went up to seek David, what hearing David, went down to the fortress. And the Philistines came, and extended themselves through the valley of Rephaim. And David inquired of the Lord, saying, Shall I go up against the Philistines? Will you deliver them into my hands? And the Lord said to David, Go up, for I will surely give the Philistines into your hand. So David went to Baal-perazim, and there David smote them, and said, The Lord hath broken forth before me, as one breaking up waters. Therefore he called the name of that place Baal-perazim. And there they left their idols, and David and his men took them. And the Philistines went up again, and spread out in the valley of Rephaim. And David inquired of the Lord, who said, Thou shalt not go up, but go around behind them, and you will come to them in front of the mulberry trees. And it will be that, when you hear the sound of marching through the tops of the mulberry trees, then you will hurry, for the Lord went out before thee to smite the host of the Philistines. And David did as the Lord had commanded him, and he smote the Philistines from Geba to Gezer. 2 Samuel 6. And David gathered again all the chosen of Israel, to the number of 30,000. And David arose, and departed, and all the people that were with him, to Baalim of Judah, to carry up from there the ark of God, upon which the name is invoked, the name of the Lord of hosts, who sits between the cherubim. And they put the ark of God on a new cart, and brought it from the house of Abinadab, which is in Gibeah, and Uzzah and Ahio, sons of Abinadab, drove the new chariot. And taking him from the house of Abinadab, which is in Gibeah, with the ark of God, Ahio went before the ark. And David, and all the house of Israel, feasted before the Lord, with all sorts of instruments of aspen wood, and also with harps, and with psalteries, and with tambourines, and with cymbals. And when he came to the threshing floor of Nacon, Uzzah stretched out his hand to the ark of God, and took hold of it, because the oxen let it hang. Then the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, and God smote him there for this rashness, and he died there by the ark of God. And David was grieved, because the Lord had broken through Uzzah, and he called that place Perez-Uzzah, to this day. And David feared the Lord that day, and he said, How shall the ark of the Lord come to me? And David would not take the ark of the Lord to him from the city of David, but David had her brought to the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite. And the ark of the Lord stayed in the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite 3 months, and the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and all his house. Then it was told David, saying, The Lord blessed the house of Obed-Edom and all that he had, because of the ark of God. So David went and brought the ark of God up from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with joy. And it came to pass, when those who carried the ark of the Lord had taken 6 steps, he sacrificed oxen and fat rams. And David leaped with all his might before the Lord, and David was girded with a linen ephod. So going up, David and all Israel brought the ark of the Lord with shouting and the sound of trumpets. And it came to pass, as the ark of the Lord entered the city of David, that Michal, Saul's daughter, was looking through the window, and when she saw King David dancing and leaping before the Lord, she despised him in her heart. And they brought in the ark of the Lord, and set it in its place, in the tent that David had pitched for it, and David offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. And when David had made an end of offering the burnt offerings and peace offerings, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord of hosts. And he distributed to all the people, and to the whole multitude of Israel, both men and women, to each one a loaf of bread, and a good piece of meat, and a flask of wine. Then all the people departed, each to his own house. And when David returned to bless his house, Michal the daughter of Saul came out to meet David, and said, How honorable was the king of Israel, discovering himself today in the eyes of the handmaidens of his servants, as without I'm sorry if any of the strays are discovered. But David said to Michal, In the sight of the Lord, who chose me above your father and all his house, and commanded me to be ruler over the people of the Lord, over Israel, I have rejoiced before the Lord. And even more than this I will debase myself, and humble myself in my own eyes. But of the handmaids, of whom you spoke, by them I will be honored. And Michal, Saul's daughter, was childless until the day of her death. Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our channel, leave your like, and make a comment. 2 Samuel 7. And it came to pass, when King David was in his house, and the Lord had given him rest from all his enemies round about, the king said to Nathan the prophet, Behold, I live in a cedar house, and the ark of God lives within curtains. And Nathan said to the king, Go, and do all that is in your heart, because the Lord is with you. But it came to pass that same night, that the word of the Lord came to Nathan, saying, Go and tell my servant David, Thus says the Lord, Will you build me an house to dwell in? For I have not lived in any house since the day that I brought up the children of Israel from Egypt until this day, but I walked in a tent and in a tabernacle. And in all the places where I went with all the children of Israel, did I ever speak a word to any of the tribes of Israel, whom I commanded to feed my people Israel, saying, Why do you not build me a house of cedar? Now therefore thus shalt thou say unto my servant David, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, I took thee out of the pasture, from following the sheep, that thou shouldest be ruler over my people, over Israel. And I went with you wherever you went, and I destroyed your enemies before you, and I made your name great, like the names of the great ones who are on earth. and I will prepare a place for my people Israel, and will plant them, that they may dwell in their place, and be removed no more, and the children of wickedness shall afflict them no more, as at the first. And from the day that I commanded there to be judges over my people Israel, to you, however, I gave you rest from all your enemies, also the Lord makes you know that he will make you a house. When your days are complete, and you sleep with your fathers, then I will raise up after you one of your offspring, who will come out of your bowels, and I will establish his kingdom. He will build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be his father, and he will be my son, and if he transgresses, I will punish him with the rod of men, and with the stripes of the sons of men. But my kindness will not depart from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I took from before you. But your house and your kingdom will be established forever before you, your throne will be firm forever. According to all these words, and according to all this vision, thus spoke Nathan to David. Then King David went in, and stood before the Lord, and said, Who am I, Lord God, and what is my house, that you have brought me hither? And yet this was a little thing in your eyes, Lord God, but that you also spoke of the house of your servant for times far off. Is this the way of men, O Lord God? And what else can David tell you? For you know your servant well, O Lord God. For the sake of your word, and according to your heart, you have done all this greatness, making it known to your servant. Therefore, you are great, O Lord God, because there is none like you, and there is no other God but you alone, according to all that we have heard with our ears. And who is like your people, like Israel, the only people on earth, whom God redeemed for his people, to make a name for you, and to do these great and terrible things for you in your land, in the sight of your people, that you rescued from Egypt, banishing the nations and their gods? And you established your people Israel for your people forever, and you, Lord, became their God. Now therefore, O Lord God, this word which thou hast spoken concerning thy servant and concerning his house, confirm it forever, and do as thou hast spoken. And let your name be magnified forever, that it may be said, The Lord of hosts is God over Israel, and the house of thy servant shall be established before thee. For thou, Lord of hosts, God of Israel, hast revealed it in the ears of thy servant, saying, I will build thee a house. Therefore your servant was encouraged to pray this prayer to you. Now, Lord God, you are the same God, and your words are truth, and you have spoken this good thing to your servant. Therefore now be it served to bless the house of your servant, to remain forever before you, for you, O Lord God, have spoken, and with thy blessing shall the house of thy servant be blessed forever. 2 Samuel 8. And it came to pass after this, that David smote the Philistines, and subdued them, and David took Medagamah out of the hand of the Philistines. He also defeated the Moabites, and measured them with a line, making them lie down on the ground, and he measured them with 2 cords to kill them, and with a whole cord to keep them alive. So the Moabites became David's servants, paying tribute to him. He also smote David Hadadezer, son of Rehob, king of Zobah, when he was going to regain his dominion over the river Euphrates. And David took from him 1,000 chariots and 700 horsemen and 20,000 men on foot, and David hammed up all the chariot horses, and reserved from them 100 chariots. And the Syrians came from Damascus to help Hadadezer king of Zobah, but David slew of the Syrians 22,000 men. And David put garrisons in Syria from Damascus, and the Syrians became David's servants, paying tribute to him, and the Lord kept David wherever he went. And David took the shields of gold that were with the servants of Hadadezer, and brought them to Jerusalem. King David also took a very large amount of bronze from Betha and Berothai, cities of Hadadezer. When Toi king of Hamath heard that David had smitten the whole army of Hadadezer, he sent Toi, his son Joram, to King David, to ask him how he was doing, and to congratulate him for having fought against Hadadezer, and for having wounded him, for Hadadezer was always at war with Toi, and in his hand were vessels of silver, and vessels of gold, and vessels of bronze, which also King David consecrated to the Lord, together with the silver and gold which he had already consecrated from all the nations he had subdued. From Syria, and from Moab, and from the children of Ammon, and from the Philistines, and from Amalek, and from the spoils of Hadadezer, son of Rehob, king of Zobah. David also gained a name, when he returned from smiting the Syrians in the valley of Salt, namely, 18,000. And he placed garrisons in Edom. Throughout all Edom he placed garrisons, and all the Edomites became David's servants, and the Lord helped David wherever he went. So David reigned over all Israel, and David did justice and justice to all his people. And Joab the son of Zeruiah was over the host, and Jehoshaphat the son of Ahilud was a chronicler. And Zadok the son of Ahitub, and Ahimelech the son of Abiathar, were priests, and Sariah the scribe. Also Benaiah the son of Jehoiada was over the Cherethites and the Pelethites, but the sons of David were ministers. 2 Samuel 9. And David said, Is there any left of the house of Saul, that he should show kindness to him for Jonathan's sake? And there was a servant in the house of Saul whose name was Ziba, and they called him before David. The king said to him, Are you Ziba? And he said, Thy servant. And the king said, Is there not yet one of the house of Saul, that I may show the favor of God to him? Then said Ziba to the king, There is still a son of Jonathan, crippled in both feet. And the king said to him, Where is he? And Ziba said to the king, Behold, he is in the house of Machir, son of Ammiel, in Lodabar. Then King David sent and took him from the house of Machir the son of Ammiel from Lodabar. And Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, came to David, and prostrated himself with his face to the ground, and bowed down, and David said, Mephibosheth. And he said, Here is your servant. And David said to him, Fear not, for I will surely show you kindness for Jonathan your father's sake, and I will restore to you all the land of Saul your father, and you will always eat bread at my table. Then he bowed down, and said, Who is your servant, that you should look upon a dead dog like me? Then David called Ziba, Saul's servant, and said to him, All that belonged to Saul and to all his house I have given to your master's son. Thou shalt work the land for him, thou, and thy sons, and thy servants, and thou shalt bring in the produce, that thy master's son may have bread to eat, but Mephibosheth, your master's son, will always eat bread at my table. And Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. And Ziba said unto the king, According to all that my lord the king commandeth his servant, so shall thy servant do. As for Mephibosheth, said the king, he shall eat at my table like one of the king's sons. And Mephibosheth had a young son, whose name was Micah, and all who dwelt in the house of Ziba were servants of Mephibosheth. So Mephibosheth dwelt in Jerusalem, because he ate always at the king's table, and he was lame in both feet. 2 Samuel 10. And it came to pass after this that the king of the children of Ammon died, and his son Hanan reigned in his stead. Then David said, I will show kindness to Hanan the son of Nahash, as his father showed kindness to me. And David sent his servants to comfort him concerning his father, and the servants of David went to the land of the children of Ammon. Then said the princes of the children of Ammon to their lord Hanan, Does David honor your father in your eyes, because he sent you comforters? Did not David send his servants before you to scout this city, and to spy it out, and to overthrow it? Then Hanan took David's servants, and shaved off one half of their beards, and cut off their garments in the middle, down to their buttocks, and sent them away. When this was told to David, he sent messengers to find them, because the men were greatly ashamed. The king sent to them, saying, Stay in Jericho until your beards grow again, and then return. And when the sons of Ammon saw that they had become an abomination to David, the sons of Ammon sent and hired from the Syrians of Beth-rehob and the Syrians of Zobah 20,000 footmen, and from the king of Maacah 1,000 men, and of the men of Top 12,000 men. And hearing David, he sent to Joab and all the army of the mighty men. And the children of Ammon went out, and arrayed the battle at the entrance of the gate, but the Syrians of Zobah and Rehob, and the men of Tob and Maacah, were in the field by themselves. And when Joab saw that battle was prepared against him from the front and from the rear, he chose out of all the men of Israel, and formed them in line against the Syrians. And the remnant of the people delivered into the hand of Abishai his brother, who formed him in line against the children of Ammon. And he said, If the Syrians are stronger than I, thou wilt come to my aid, and if the children of Ammon are stronger than you, I will come to your aid. Therefore be strong, and let us be strong for our people, and for the cities of our God, and let the Lord do what seems good in his eyes. Then came Joab, and the people that were with him, to battle against the Syrians, and they fled from before him. And when the children of Ammon saw that the Syrians were fleeing, they also fled from before Abishai, and entered the city, and Joab returned from the children of Ammon, and came to Jerusalem. When the Syrians saw that they were smitten before Israel, they recovered again. And he sent Hadadezer, and brought out the Syrians that were on the other side of the river, and they came to Helam, and Shobach, captain of the army of Hadadezer, marched before them. Whereupon David was informed, he gathered all Israel together, and passed over Jordan, and came to Helam, and the Syrians arrayed themselves against David, and fought with him. But the Syrians fled before Israel, and David slew of the Syrians 700 chariots and 40,000 horsemen. He also smote Shobach, captain of the host, who died there. When all the kings, servants of Hadadezer, saw that they were smitten before Israel, they made peace with Israel, and served them, and the Syrians were afraid to help the children of Ammon. 2 Samuel 11. And it came to pass, when a year had elapsed, in the time when kings go out to war, that David sent Joab, and his servants with him, and all Israel, and they destroyed the children of Ammon, and besieged Rabbah, but David stayed in Jerusalem. And it came to pass that one evening David rose from his bed, and was walking on the roof of the king's house, and he saw from the roof a woman washing, and this woman was very fair to behold. And he sent David to inquire who that woman was, and they said, Is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? Then David sent messengers, and ordered to bring her, and she came, and he lay with her, for she was cleansed from her filth, so she returned to her house. And the woman conceived, and she sent word to David, I am with child. Then David sent to Joab, saying, Send me Uriah the Hittite. And Joab sent Uriah to David. So when Uriah came to him, David asked how Joab was faring, and how the people were, and how the war was going. Then David said to Uriah, Go down to your house, and wash your feet. And as Uriah left the royal house, he was immediately sent a gift from the king's table. But Uriah lay down at the gate of the king's house, with all his lord's servants, and he did not go down to his house. And they told David, saying, Uriah did not go down to his house. Then David said to Uriah, Art thou not come from a journey? Why didn't you go down to your house? And Uriah said to David, The ark, and Israel, and Judah, remain in tents, and my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are encamped in the field, and shall I go into my house, to eat and drink, and to lie with my wife? As you live, and as your soul lives, I will not do such a thing. Then David said to Uriah, Stay here today, and tomorrow I will send you away. So Uriah stayed in Jerusalem that day and the next. And David invited him, and ate and drank before him, and made him drunk, and in the evening he went out to lie on his bed with his lord's servants, but he did not go down to his house. And it came to pass in the morning that David wrote a letter to Joab, and he sent her by the hand of Uriah. He wrote in the letter, saying, Put Uriah at the head of the greatest force in the battle, and retreat from behind him, that he may be smitten and die. It came to pass, therefore, that when Joab had well observed the city, he put Uriah in the place where he knew that there were valiant men. And as the men went out of the city, and fought with Joab, some of the people, of David's servants, fell, and Uriah the Hittite also died. So he sent Joab, and told David all the success of the battle. And he commanded the messenger, saying, When thou hast made an end of telling the king all the success of this battle, and if the king becomes enraged, and says to you, Why did you come so close to the city to fight? Did you not know that they would throw from the wall? Who smote Abimelech the son of Jerubbesheth? Did not a woman throw a piece of a grinding millstone at him from the wall, whereupon he died at Thebez? Why did you come to the wall? Then thou shalt say, Thy servant Uriah the Hittite also died. And the messenger went in and told David all that Joab had sent him to say. And the messenger said to David, Indeed, those men were mightier than we, and they went out to us into the field, but we went against them to the entrance of the gate. Then the archers shot at your servants from the top of the wall, and some of the king's servants died, and your servant Uriah the Hittite also died. And David said unto the messenger, Thus shalt thou say unto Joab, Let not this thing displease thee, for the sword consumes both this one and that one. Strengthen thy battle against the city, and overthrow it, strive thou thus. When Uriah's wife heard that her husband was dead, she lamented to her lord. And when the morning was past, she sent David, and took her into his house, and she became his wife, and bore him a son. But this thing that David did displeased the Lord. 2 Samuel 12. And the Lord sent Nathan to David, and, presenting himself to David, he said to him, There were in a city 2 men, one rich and one poor. The rich man had many sheep and cows. But the poor man had nothing but a little ewe he had bought and bred, and she had grown up with him and his children. He ate from her morsel, and drank from her cup, and slept in her bosom, and had her as his daughter. And when a traveler came to the rich man, he stopped taking of his sheep and herds to roast for the traveler who came to him, and he took the poor man's lamb, and prepared it for the man that came to him. Then David's fury was greatly kindled against the man, and he said to Nathan, As the Lord lives, the man who has done this deserves death. And he will give 4 times as much for the lamb again, because he did this thing, and because he had no mercy. Then Nathan said to David, You are the man. Thus says the Lord God of Israel, I anointed you king over Israel, and I delivered you from the hand of Saul. And I gave you your master's house, and your master's wives into your bosom, and I also gave you the house of Israel and Judah. Why then did you despise the word of the Lord, doing evil in his sight? You slew Uriah the Hittite with the sword, and you took his wife as your wife. And him you slew with the sword of the Ammonites. Now therefore, the sword shall never depart from your house, because you have despised me, and have taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your wife. Thus saith the Lord, Behold, I will raise up evil upon thee out of thine own house, and I will take thy wives before thine eyes, and will give them unto thy neighbor, who shall lie with thy wives before the sun. Because you did it in secret, but I will do this thing before all Israel and before the sun. Then David said to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. And Nathan said to David, The Lord also put away your sin, thou shalt not die. However, because by this deed of this place the enemies of the Lord blaspheme, even the son who was born to you will surely die. So Nathan went to his house, and the Lord smote the child that Uriah's wife had borne to David, and he became very sick. And David sought God for the child, and David fasted, and went in, and spent the night prostrate upon the earth. Then the elders of his house arose and went to him to raise him up from the earth, but he would not, and did not eat bread with them. And it came to pass on the 7th day that the child died, and David's servants were afraid to tell him that the child was dead, for they said, Behold, while the child was yet alive, we spoke to him, but he would not listen to our voice. How then shall we tell him that the child is dead? Because it would hurt you the most. But David saw that his servants were speaking in a low voice, and David understood that the child was dead. So David said to his servants, Is the child dead? And they said, It is dead. Then David rose from the ground, and washed, and anointed himself, and changed his clothes, and went into the house of the Lord, and worshipped. So he went to his house, and asked for bread, and they gave him bread, and he ate. And his servants said to him, What is this that you have done? For the living child you fasted and wept, but after the child died you got up and ate bread. And he said, While the child was yet alive, I fasted and wept, for I said, Who knows whether God will have mercy on me, and the child will live? But now that she is dead, why should I fast? Can I make her come back? I will go to her, but she will not return to me. Then David comforted Bathsheba her wife, and he went into her, and lay with her, and she gave birth to a son, and he called his name Solomon, and the Lord loved him. And he sent by the hand of Nathan the prophet, naming him Jedediah, for the Lord's sake. Now he fought Joab against Rabbah of the Ammonites, and took the royal city. Then Joab sent messengers to David, and said, I fought against Rabbah, and I also took the city of waters. Now therefore gather the remnant of the people, and besiege the city, and take it, lest I take the city, and my name not be called upon it. So David gathered all the people together, and he marched to Rabbah, and fought against it, and took it. And he took the crown from off his king's head, the weight of which was a talent of gold, and having precious stones in it, and it was placed on David's head. And from the city he carried off a very large spoil. And bringing the people that were in it, he put them to the saws, into the iron chisels, into the iron axes, and made them pass through a brick oven, and thus he did to all the cities of the children of Ammon, and David and all the people returned to Jerusalem. Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our channel, leave your like, and make a comment. 2 Samuel 13. And it came to pass after this, that, having Absalom, son of David, a beautiful sister, whose name was Tamar, Amnon, son of David, loved her. And Amnon was distressed until he was sick for Tamar her sister, because she was a virgin, and it seemed to Amnon hard to do anything to him. She had, however, Amnon a friend, whose name was Jonadab, son of Shemaiah, David's brother, and Jonadab was a very shrewd man, who said to him, "Why do you grow so thin from day to day, being a son of the king? Won't you let me know?" Then Amnon said to him, "Tamar, sister of Absalom, my brother, I love." And Jonadab said to him, "Lie down on your bed, and pretend to be sick, and when your father comes to visit you, say to him, 'Please let my sister Tamar come and give me bread to eat, and prepare food before my eyes, that I may see it and eat from her hand.'" So she lay down, Amnon, and pretended to be sick, and when the king came to see him, Amnon said to the king, "Please let my sister Tamar come and prepare 2 cakes before my eyes, that I may eat from her hand." Then David sent home to Tamar, saying, "Go to your brother Amnon's house and prepare food for him." And Tamar went to the house of Amnon her brother. He was lying down, and took dough, and kneaded it, and made cakes before his eyes, and baked the cakes. And she took the frying pan, and poured them out before him, but he refused to eat. And Amnon said, "Remove them all from my presence." And everyone withdrew from him. Then Amnon said to Tamar, "Bring the food into the room, and I will eat from your hand." And Tamar took the cakes that she had made, and brought them to Amnon her brother in the bedroom. And when he came to them, that he might eat, he took hold of her, and said to her, "Come, lie with me, my sister." But she said to him, "No, my brother, do not force me, because it is not done in Israel, do not do such madness. Because where would I go with my shame? And you would be like one of the fools of Israel. Now therefore, I pray thee, speak to the king, for he will not deny me to thee." But he would not listen to her voice, rather, being stronger than she, he forced her, and lay with her. Afterwards Amnon felt a great loathing for her, for the hatred he felt for her was greater than the love with which he had loved her. And Amnon said to him, "Arise, and go your way." So she said to him, "There's no reason to dismiss me like that, this evil would be greater than the other that you have already done to me." But he didn't want to listen to him. And he called his servant that served him, and said, "Put this one out, and shut the door after her." And she wore a garment of many colors, for that is how the virgin daughters of kings were dressed, and her servant put her out, and shut the door after her. Then Tamar took ashes on her head, and the many-colored garment she was wearing tore, and he laid his hands on his head, and went walking and crying. And Absalom his brother said to him, "Has Amnon your brother been with you? Now then, my sister, be silent, he is your brother. Don't let your heart be troubled by this." So was Tamar, and she was lonely in her brother Absalom's house. And when King David heard all these things, his anger was greatly kindled. But Absalom did not speak to Amnon either bad or good, for Absalom hated Amnon, for having forced his sister Tamar. And it came to pass, that after 2 full years had passed, Absalom had shearers in Baal-hazor, which is beside Ephraim, and Absalom invited all the king's sons. And Absalom went to the king, and said, "Behold, thy servant hath shearers, I ask that the king and his servants come with your servant." But the king said to Absalom, "No, my son, let us not all go together, lest we be a burden to you." And he urged him, but he would not go, but blessed him. Then Absalom said, "If not, let Amnon my brother go with us." But the king said, "Why would I go with you?" And when Absalom urged him, he let Amnon and all the king's sons go with him. And Absalom commanded his servants, saying, "Make sense, when Amnon's heart is merry with wine, and I say to you, smite Amnon, then you shall kill him, fear not, for have I not commanded you? Strive, and be brave." And Absalom's servants did to Amnon as Absalom had commanded him. Then all the king's sons arose, and each one mounted on his mule, and fled. And it came to pass, while they were still on the way, that news came to David, saying, "Absalom has slain all the king's sons, and not one of them is left." Then the king arose, and tore his clothes, and fell to the ground, likewise all his servants were in torn garments. But Jonadab the son of Shemaiah, David's brother, answered and said, Let not my lord say that they slew all the young men of the king's sons, for Amnon alone died, for so had Absalom resolved to do, from the day that he forced his sister Tamar. Let not therefore put this thing into the heart of my lord the king now, saying, All the king's sons are dead, because only Amnon died. And Absalom fled, and the young man that was on guard lifted up his eyes, and looked, and, behold, a great multitude of people were coming along the way behind him on the side of the mountain. Then Jonadab said to the king, Behold, the king's sons come, according to the word of thy servant. So it was. And it came to pass, as he had just spoken, that the king's sons came, and lifted up their voice, and wept, and also the king and all his servants wept bitterly. So Absalom fled, and went to Talmai, son of Amir, king of Geshur. And David mourned for his son all those days. So Absalom fled, and went to Geshur. He was there 3 years. So did King David long for Absalom, for he had already comforted himself concerning the death of Amnon. 2 Samuel 14. When Joab the son of Zeruiah knew that the king's heart was inclined toward Absalom, he sent Joab to Tekoa, and took a woman there, and said to her, Now, pretend that you are in mourning, put on mourning clothes, and do not anoint yourself with oil, and be like a woman who has mourned for a dead man for many days. And go to the king, and speak to him according to this word. And Joab put the words in his mouth. And the Tekoite woman spoke to the king, and, lying down with her face to the ground, she prostrated herself and said, Save me, O king. And the king said to him, What ails you? And she said, Indeed I am a widow woman, my husband died. Your handmaid had 2 sons, and they fought with each other in the field, and there was no one to separate them. So the one smote the other, and slew him. And, behold, all the race rose up against thy handmaid, and said, Give us him that smote her brother, that we may slay him for the life of his brother, whom he slew, and that we may destroy also the heir. In this way they will quench the ember that remains for me, so that they do not leave my husband a name or a remnant on the earth. And the king said to the woman, Go to your house, and I will send a command concerning you. And the Tekoite woman said unto the king, In justice, my lord king, be upon me and upon my father's house, and the king and his throne be blameless. And the king said, Whoever speaks against you, bring him to me, and will never touch you again. And she said, Now let the king remember the Lord as God, lest the avengers of blood go on in destruction, and destroy my son. Then he said, As the Lord lives, not one of your son's hairs shall fall to the ground. Then the woman said, Please let your handmaid speak a word to my lord the king. And he said, Speak. And the woman said, Why then have you thought such a thing against the people of God? Because, when the king speaks such a word, he becomes guilty, since the king does not bring back his exile. For we shall surely die, and be like waters poured out on the earth, which cannot be gathered up any more. God, therefore, will not take his life, but he considers means, so that his exile will not be banished from him. And if I have now come to speak this word to my lord the king, it is because the people have frightened me. Thy handmaid said, I will speak therefore to the king, peradventure the king will do according to the word of his handmaid. For the king will hearken, to deliver his servant out of the hand of the man who seeks to destroy me and my son together from the heritage of God. Your handmaid said moreover, Let now be the word of my lord the king for rest, for like an angel of God, so is the king, my lord, to hear good and evil, and the Lord your God will be with you. Then the king answered and said to the woman, I beg you, do not conceal from me what I ask you. And the woman said, Let my lord the king speak. And the king said, Is not the hand of Joab with you in all this? And the woman answered and said, As thy soul liveth, O my lord the king, no man can turn to the right hand or to the left, from all that my lord the king hath spoken, for Joab thy servant, he is the one who commanded me, and it was he who put all these words in the mouth of your handmaid. It was to change the aspect of this case that your servant Joab did this, but wise is my lord, according to the wisdom of an angel of God, to understand all that is in the earth. Then the king said to Joab, Behold, I have done this, so go and bring the young man Absalom back. Then Joab fell on his face to the ground, and bowed down, and thanked the king. And Joab said, Thy servant knoweth today that I have found favor in thy sight, O my lord the king, because the king hath done according to the word of thy servant. So Joab arose, and went to Geshur, and brought Absalom to Jerusalem. And the king said, Return to your house, and do not see my face. So Absalom returned to his house, and did not see the king's face. But there was no man in all Israel so handsome and so pleasant as Absalom. From the sole of his foot to his head there was no blemish in him. And when he would shave his head, and it happened that at the end of each year he would shave it, because it weighed a lot to him, and therefore he would shave it, he would weigh the hair of his head 200 shekels, according to the actual weight. Absalom also had 3 sons and a daughter, whose name was Tamar, and this woman was fair to behold. So Absalom stayed 2 full years in Jerusalem, and did not see the king's face. So Absalom sent for Joab to send him to the king. But he would not come to him, and he sent yet a second time, and yet he would not come. Then he said to his servants, See Joab's field there next to mine, and there is barley in it, go, and set it on fire. And Absalom's servants set the field on fire. Then Joab arose, and came to Absalom in the house, and said unto him, Why have thy servants set my field on fire? And Absalom said to Joab, Behold, I sent to you, saying, Come hither, that I may send you to the king, to say, Why did I come from Geshur? It was better for me to still be there. Now therefore, let me see the face of the king, and if there is still any guilt in me, let him kill me. So Joab went to the king, and told him so. Then he called for Absalom, and he presented himself to the king, and bowed down on his face to the ground before the king, and the king kissed Absalom. 2 Samuel 15. And it came to pass after this that Absalom equipped chariots and horses, and 50 men to run before him. Absalom also rose in the morning, and stood by the way of the gate. And it happened that every man who had a claim to come to the king for judgment, Absalom would call to him, and say to him, What city are you from? And when he said, From one of the tribes of Israel is your servant, then Absalom would say to him, See, your dealings are good and right, but you have no one to listen to you on behalf of the king. And Absalom said, Ah, that I was a judge in the land, that every man that had a lawsuit or question would come to me, that I might give him justice. It also happened that when someone came to him to bow down to him, he would stretch out his hand and take it and kiss it. And in this manner Absalom did to all Israel that came to the king for judgment, so did Absalom steal the hearts of the men of Israel. So it came to pass at the end of 40 years, that Absalom said to the king, Let me go and pay my vow to the Lord at Hebron. For while I dwelt in Geshur in Syria, your servant made a vow, saying, If the Lord will bring me back to Jerusalem again, I will serve the Lord. Then the king said to him, Go in peace. So he arose and went to Hebron. And he sent Absalom spies throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, When ye shall hear the sound of the trumpets, ye shall say, Absalom reigneth in Hebron. And from Jerusalem went with Absalom 200 men invited, but they went in their simplicity, because they knew nothing of the matter. Absalom also sent for Ahithophel the Gilonite, from the council of David, to his city of Gilo, while he was offering his sacrifices, and the conspiracy strengthened, and the people came and grew with Absalom. Then there came a messenger to David, saying, The heart of every one in Israel goes after Absalom. So David said to all his servants who were with him in Jerusalem, Rise up and let us flee, for we cannot escape from Absalom. Make haste to walk, lest he make haste and overtake us, and bring harm upon us, and smite the city with the edge of the sword. Then the king's servants said to the king, Here are your servants for all that our lord the king shall decide. And the king went out, with all his household, on foot, but the king left 10 women concubines to guard the house. So when the king and all the people went out on foot, they stopped at a distant place. And all his servants went with him, and all the Cherethites and all the Pelethites, and all the Gittites, 600 men who came from Gath on foot, walked before the king. So the king said to Ittai the Gittite, Why would you also go with us? Turn and remain with the king, for you are a foreigner and an exile from your place. Yesterday you came, and would I take you with us today to walk? For I go where I can go, so go back and take your brothers back with you, in kindness and faithfulness. But Ittai answered the king, and said, As the Lord lives, and as my lord the king lives, surely in the place where my lord the king may be, whether in death or in life, there will your servant also be. Then David said to Ittai, Come, then, pass on. So Ittai the Gittite passed by, and all his men, and all the children that were with him. And all the land wept with a loud voice, as all the people passed by. The king also passed over the brook Kidron, and passed all the people towards the way of the wilderness. Behold, Zadok also was there, and with him all the Levites who carried the ark of the covenant of God, and there they put the ark of God, and Abiathar went up, until all the people had passed out of the city. Then said the king to Zadok, Bring the ark of God back into the city, that if I find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he will bring me back there and let me see her and her dwelling place. If, however, I say like this, I have no pleasure in you, here I am, do with me as seems right in his eyes. And the king said unto Zadok the priest, Art thou not a seer? Return in peace to the city, and your 2 sons with you, Ahimaaz your son and Jonathan the son of Abiathar. Look, I'll stay in the desert plains until I hear from you. Then Zadok and Abiathar carried the ark of God back to Jerusalem, and they stayed there. And he followed David along the slope of the Mount of Olives, going up and weeping, and with his head covered, and he walked barefoot, and all the people that went with him covered each one his head, and went up crying without ceasing. Then they told David, saying, Ahithophel also is among those who conspired with Absalom. And David said, O Lord, I pray thee, turn the counsel of Ahithophel into folly. And it came to pass, when David came to the top to worship God there, behold, Hushai the Archite met him with his garment torn and dirt on his head. And David said to him, If you pass with me, you will be burdensome to me. But if you return to the city, and say to Absalom, I will be your servant, O king, I was your father's servant before, but now I will be your servant, then shalt thou destroy me the counsel of Ahithophel. And are not Zadok and Abiathar the priests there with you? And it shall come to pass, that all things thou shalt hear from the king's house, thou shalt make known to Zadok, and to Abiathar, the priests. Behold, their 2 sons are there with them, Ahimaaz the son of Zadok, and Jonathan the son of Abiathar. By their hand you shall send me warning, of all the things that you hear. Hushai, David's friend, came into the city, and Absalom entered Jerusalem. 2 Samuel 16. And as David passed a little farther from the top, behold, Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, met him, with a pair of saddled asses, and on them 200 loaves of bread, with 100 bunches of raisins, and 100 pieces of fruit, summer and a skin of wine. And the king said to Ziba, What do you mean by this? And Ziba said, Asses are for the king's house, to ride upon, and bread and summer fruit for the young men to eat, and wine for the weary to drink in the wilderness. Then said the king, Where is thy master's son? And Ziba said to the king, Behold, he remains in Jerusalem, for he said, Today shall the house of Israel restore to me the kingdom of my father. Then the king said to Ziba, Behold, all that Mephibosheth has is yours. And Ziba said, I bow down, that I may find favor in your eyes, O king my lord. And when King David came to Bahurim, behold, a man of the lineage of the house of Saul, whose name was Shimei, son of Gera, came out from there, and he went out cursing. And he threw stones at David, and at all the servants of King David, though all the people and all the mighty men went to his right and to his left. And when Shimei cursed him, he said thus, Get out, man of blood, and man of Belial. The Lord has now paid you back for all the blood of the house of Saul, in whose place you have reigned. The Lord has given the kingdom into the hand of Absalom your son, and behold now thou art in thy misfortune, for thou art a man of blood. Then said Abishai the son of Zeruiah to the king, Why should I curse this dead dog to my lord the king? Let me through, and I'll take your head. But the king said, What have I to do with you, sons of Zeruiah? Now let him curse, for the Lord said unto him, Curse David. Who would then say, Why did you do this? And David said to Abishai, and to all his servants, Behold, my son, which came out of my bowels, seeks my death, how much more this Benjamite? Let him curse, because the Lord told him so. Perhaps the Lord will look upon my affliction, and the Lord will repay me good for his curse of this day. So David and his men went his way, and Shimei also went along the mountain in front of it, walking and cursing, and hurling stones at it, and raising dust. And the king and all the people that went with him arrived weary, and refreshed themselves there. So Absalom and all the people, the men of Israel, came to Jerusalem, and Ahithophel with him. And it came to pass, when Hushai the Archite, David's friend, came to Absalom, that Hushai said to Absalom, "Long live the king, long live the king." But Absalom said to Hushai, "Is this your kindness to your friend? Why didn't you go with your friend?" And Hushai said to Absalom, "No, but the one who chooses the Lord, and all this people, and all the men of Israel, I will be his, and with him I will remain. And what's more, who would I serve? Would it not be in front of his son? As I served before your father, so will I be before you." Then Absalom said to Ahithophel, "Take counsel among yourselves what we should do." And Ahithophel said to Absalom, "Take the concubines of your father, which he left to keep the house, and so shall all Israel hear that thou hast made thyself an abomination to thy father, and the hands of all who are with you will be strengthened." So they spread Absalom a tent on the roof, and Absalom had his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. And it was the advice of Ahithophel, who advised in those days, as if the word of God had been consulted, such was the whole counsel of Ahithophel, both to David and to Absalom. 2 Samuel 17. And Ahithophel said to Absalom, "Let me choose 12,000 men, and I will arise and pursue David this night. And I will come upon him, for he is weary and slack of hand, and I will make him afraid, and all the people that are with him shall flee, and then I will smite the king alone. And I will bring all the people back to you, for the man whom thou seekest is as it were become all, then all the people will be at peace." And the word seemed good in the eyes of Absalom, and in the eyes of all the elders of Israel. But Absalom said, "Call now also Hushai the Archite, and let us also hear what he will say." And when Hushai came to Absalom, Absalom spoke to him, saying, "Ahithophel spake thus, shall we do according to his word? If not, you speak." Then Hushai said to Absalom, "The advice that Ahithophel gave this time is not good." And Hushai said, "Thou knowest thy father, and his men, that they are valiant, and that are grieved in spirit, like a bear in the field, stolen from the dogs, and also your father is a man of war, and he will not spend the night with the people. Behold, now he will be hidden in some cave, or in any other place, and it shall come to pass, that when some of them fall at the beginning, then every one that heareth it shall say, The people that followed Absalom hath been defeated. Then even the mighty man whose heart is like the heart of a lion will surely faint, for all Israel know that thy father is mighty, and valiant men are those with him. But I counsel that all Israel from Dan to Beersheba be gathered to you as quickly as the sand of the sea, and you yourself go with them to the battle. Then we will go to him, wherever he may be found, we will easily fall on him, as dew falls on the earth, and not one will remain of him and of all the men who are with him. And if he withdraws to any city, all Israel will carry ropes to that city, and we will drag it to the brook, until not a single stone is found there." Then Absalom and all the men of Israel said, "The counsel of Hushai the Archite was better than the counsel of Ahithophel, but thus the Lord had commanded, to overthrow the good counsel of Ahithophel, that the Lord might bring evil upon Absalom." And Hushai said to Zadok and Abiathar, the priests, "Thus and thus did Ahithophel advise Absalom and the elders of Israel, but so and so I advised. Now therefore, send quickly, and warn David, saying, Pass not this night in the plains of the desert, then he also passes over to the other side, so that the king and all the people who are with him may not be devoured." So Jonathan and Ahimaaz were by the well of Rogel, and there was a maidservant, and told him, and they went and told King David, because they could not be seen entering the city. But a young man saw them, and told Absalom, but both immediately departed in haste, and entered a man's house at Bahurim, who had a well in his court, and went down into there. And he took the woman the cover, and spread it over the mouth of the well, and scattered husked grain over it, so nothing was known. So when Absalom's servants came to the woman in the house, they said, Where are Ahimaaz and Jonathan? And the woman said unto them, They are passed over the ford of the waters. And having sought them, and not finding them, they returned to Jerusalem. And it came to pass, after they had departed, Ahimaaz and Jonathan came up out of the pit, and they went and told David. And they said to David, Arise, and pass quickly over the waters, for so hath Ahithophel counseled against you. Then David and all the people that were with him arose, and they crossed Jordan, and by morning light there was not one missing who had not crossed the Jordan. And when Ahithophel saw that his counsel had not been followed, he saddled his ass, and arose, and went to his house, and to his city, and commanded his house, and hanged himself, and died, and was buried on his father's grave. And David went to Mahanaim, and Absalom crossed Jordan, he and all the men of Israel with him. And Absalom appointed Amasa in place of Joab over the camp, and Amasa was the son of a man whose name was Ithra the Israelite, who had possessed Abigail, daughter of Nahash, sister of Zeruiah, mother of Joab. Israel therefore and Absalom encamped in the land of Gilead. And it came to pass, when David came to Mahanaim, Shobi the son of Nahash from Rabbah of the children of Ammon, and Machir the son of Ammiel from Lodabar, and Barzillai the Gileadite from Rogelim. They took beds, and basins, and earthen vessels, and wheat, and barley, and flour, and roasted corn, and broad beans, and lentils, also roasted, and honey, and butter, and sheep, and cheese from cows, and they brought them to David and the people that were with him, to eat, for they said, This people in the desert is hungry, weary, and thirsty. 2 Samuel 18. And David numbered the people that he had with him, and set captains of thousands and captains of hundreds over them. And David sent the people, a third under the command of Joab, and another third under the command of Abishai, son of Zeruiah, Joab's brother, and another third under the command of Ittai the Gittite. And the king said to the people, I will also go out with you. But the people said, Thou shalt not go out, for if we are forced to flee, they will not care for us, and even if half of us die, they will take no notice of us, for still, such as we are, you will gather 10,000, it is better, then, that you serve us out of the city. Then David said to him, What seems good in your eyes, I will do. And the king stood by the side of the gate, and all the people came out in hundreds and thousands. And the king commanded Joab, and Abishai, and Ittai, saying, Deal kindly, for my sake, with the young man Absalom. And all the people heard when the king commanded all the captains concerning Absalom. So the people went out into the field to meet Israel, and battle broke out in the forest of Ephraim. And there the people of Israel were smitten before the servants of David, and that very day there was a great rout there of 20,000. For there the battle was poured out over the face of all that land, and the forest consumed more of the people than the sword consumed that day. And Absalom met with the servants of David, and Absalom was riding on a mule, and as the mule went under the thick boughs of a great oak, his head was caught in the oak, and it hung between heaven and earth, and the mule that was under him passed on. When a man saw, he told Joab, and said, Behold, I saw Absalom hanging from an oak. Then Joab said to the man who had told him, Since you saw him, why didn't you smite him right there on the ground? And I would have to give you 10 pieces of silver and a belt. But the man said to Joab, Even if I could weigh 1,000 pieces of silver in my hand, I would not stretch out my hand against the king's son, for we have heard that the king commanded you, and Abishai, and to Ittai, saying, Beware, every one of you, from touching the young man Absalom. Even if I committed a lie at the risk of my life, I would still not hide anything from the king, and you yourself would oppose. Then said Joab, I will not tarry thus with the ear. And he took 3 darts, and pierced Absalom's heart with them, while he was yet alive in the midst of the oak. And 10 young men surrounded him, who took Joab's weapons. And they smote Absalom, and slew him. Then Joab blew the horn, and the people returned from pursuing Israel, for Joab held back the people. And they took Absalom, and cast him into a great pit in the forest, and heaped a very great heap of stones over him, and all Israel fled, each to his tent. Now Absalom, when he was yet alive, had taken and set up for himself a pillar, which is in the king's dale, for he said, I have no son to keep my name in remembrance. And he called that column by its own name, therefore to this day it is called the pillar of Absalom. Then said Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, Let me run, and I will tell the king that the Lord has already avenged him of the hand of his enemies. But Joab said to him, Thou shalt not bear news today, but another day thou shalt bring it. But today thou shalt not break the news, because the king's son is dead. And Joab said to Cushi, Go thou, and tell the king what thou hast seen. And Cushi bowed down to Joab, and ran. And Ahimaaz the son of Zadok went on, and said to Joab, "Whatever it is, let me also run after Cushi." And Joab said, "Why would you run now, my son, since you have no suitable message?" "Whatever it is," Ahimaaz said, "I will run." And Joab said to him, "Run." And Ahimaaz ran by the way of the plain, and passed to Cushi. And David was sitting between the two gates, and the watchman went up to the terrace of the gate by the wall, and he lifted up his eyes, and looked, and behold, a man was running alone. So he called out to the watchman, and said to the king, "If he comes alone, there is news in his mouth." And he was walking and coming. Then the watchman saw another man running, then said the king, "Bring this news also." The watchman said more, "I see the running of the first, which seems to be the running of Ahimaaz, son of Zadok." Then said the king, "This is a good man, and he will come with good news." Then he called Ahimaaz, and said to the king, "Peace." And he bowed down to the king with his face to the ground, and said, "Blessed be the Lord, who hath delivered up the men that raised their hand against my lord the king." Then said the king, "Is it well with the young man, with Absalom?" And Ahimaaz said, "I saw a great uproar when Joab sent the king's servant, and me your servant, but I don't know what it was." And the king said, "Turn around, and stand here." And he turned around, and stopped. And, behold, Cushi came, and Cushi said, "It shall be told to my lord the king, that the Lord hath avenged thee this day of the hand of all them that rose up against thee." Then said the king to Cushi, "Is it well with the young man, with Absalom?" And Cushi said, "May the enemies of my lord the king be like that young man, and all who rise up against you for harm." Then the king was troubled, and he went up to the room that was above the door, and wept, and walking, he said thus, "My son Absalom, my son, Absalom. I wish I had died for you, Absalom, my son, my son." Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our channel, leave your like, and make a comment. 2 Samuel 19. And they said unto Joab, "Behold, the king goeth weeping, and mourneth for Absalom." So the victory turned that very day into grief for all the people, for that very day the people had heard it said, "The king is grieved for his son." And that same day the people crept into the city, as they do when they flee from battle and shame. So the king had his face covered, and the king cried with a loud voice, "Absalom my son, Absalom my son, my son." Then Joab went into the king's house, and said, "Today you have shamed the face of all your servants, who have saved your life this day, and the lives of your sons and daughters, and the lives of your wives, and the lives of your concubines, loving your enemies and hating your friends. Because today you make it clear that princes and servants are worthless to you, because I understand today that if Absalom lived, and we all died today, you would be very happy. Arise therefore now." He goes forth, and speaks according to the heart of thy servants, for I swear by the Lord that if you do not go out, not one man will stay with you tonight, and this shall be greater evil to you than all the evil that has befallen you from your youth until now. Then the king arose, and sat in the door, and they told all the people, saying, "Behold, the king sitteth in the gate." Then all the people came to present themselves before the king, but Israel had fled every one to his tent. And all the people, and all the tribes of Israel, strove among themselves, saying, "The king delivered us out of the hand of our enemies, and he delivered us out of the hand of the Philistines, and now he fled from the land because of Absalom. And Absalom, whom we anointed over us, died in the battle. Now therefore why are you silent, and do not bring back the king?" Then King David sent to Zadok and Abiathar, the priests, saying, "Speak to the elders of Judah, saying, Why are you the last to bring the king back to his house? For the words of all Israel have reached the king, even to his house. You are my brothers, my bones and my flesh are you, why then should you be the last to bring back the king? And to Amasa you shall say, Are you not my bone and my flesh? So may God do to me, and so much more, if you are not captain of the camp before me forever instead of Joab." Thus he moved the hearts of all the men of Judah as one man, and they sent to the king, saying, "Return thou, and all thy servants." So the king returned, and came to Jordan, and Judah came to Gilgal to go to meet the king across Jordan. And hurried up Shimei, the son of Gera, a Benjamite, who was from Bahurim, and he went down with the men of Judah to meet King David. and with him 1,000 men of Benjamin, and Ziba the servant of the house of Saul, and his 15 sons, and his 20 servants with him, and they promptly crossed over Jordan before the king. And when he had crossed the barge to make the king's house pass and to do what seemed good in his eyes, then Shimei, son of Gera, prostrated himself before the king, as he crossed the Jordan. And he said unto the king, Let not my lord charge me with my guilt, and remember not what thy servant did so wickedly, in the day that my lord the king went out of Jerusalem. Don't keep the king that in your heart. Because your servant indeed confesses that he has sinned, but, behold, I am the first of all the house of Joseph to go down to meet my lord the king. Then Abishai the son of Zeruiah answered and said, Should not Shimei die for this, having cursed the Lord's anointed? But David said, What have I to do with you, sons of Zeruiah, that you are adversaries against me today? Would anyone die today in Israel? For do I not know that today I have been made king over Israel? And the king said to Shimei, Thou shalt not die. And the king swore to him. Also Mephibosheth, Saul's son, went down to meet the king, and he had not washed his feet, nor had he shaved, nor had he washed his clothes from the day the king went out until the day he returned in peace. And it came to pass, when he came to Jerusalem to meet the king, that the king said unto him, Why didst thou not go with me, Mephibosheth? And he said, O my lord the king, my servant deceived me, for thy servant said, I will saddle a donkey, and I will ride upon it, and I will go with the king, for your servant is lame. Furthermore, he falsely accused your servant before my lord the king, but my lord the king is like an angel of God, therefore do what seems good in your eyes. For all my father's house were but men worthy of death before my lord the king, and yet thou hast set thy servant among them that eat at thy table, and what more right have I to cry to the king? And the king said to him, Why do you talk any more about your business? I already said, You and Ziba divide the lands. And Mephibosheth said to the king, Let him also take all, for my lord the king has come to his house in peace. Barzillai the Gileadite also went down from Rogelim, and crossed the Jordan with the king, to accompany him across the Jordan. And Barzillai was very old, 80 years old, and he had supported the king, when he had his dwelling in Mahanaim, because he was a great man. And the king said to Barzillai, Pass thou with me, and I will sustain thee with me in Jerusalem. But Barzillai said to the king, How many days will my life last, that I should go up with the king to Jerusalem? From the age of 80 am I today, could I discern between the good and the bad? Could your servant have taste in food and drink? Could I hear the voice of male and female singers any more? And why shall thy servant yet be a burden to my lord the king? Your servant will go over Jordan a little farther with the king, and why will the king reward me with such a reward? Let your servant return, and I will die in my city, beside the sepulchre of my father and my mother. But, behold, your servant Chimham is there, let him pass over with my lord the king, and do to him what is good in your eyes. Then the king said, Chimham shall pass over with me, and I will do to him as seems good in your eyes, and whatever you ask of me I will do for you. When all the people had crossed over Jordan, and the king had crossed over, the king kissed Barzillai and blessed him. And he returned to his place. And from there the king passed to Gilgal, and Chimham passed with him, and all the people of Judah led the king, as well as half the people of Israel. And behold, all the men of Israel came to the king, and said to the king, Why did our brethren the men of Judah steal from thee, and carry the king and his house across Jordan, and all the men of David with them? Then all the men of Judah answered the men of Israel, Because the king is our kinsman, and why are you angry about it? Did we eat at the king's expense, or did he give us a gift? And the men of Israel answered the men of Judah, and said, 10 parts we have in the king, and even in David we have more than you. Why then did you not take account of us, that our word should not be the first, to bring back our king? But the word of the men of Judah was stronger than the word of the men of Israel. 2 Samuel 20. Then there was found by chance a man of Belial, whose name was Sheba, the son of Bichri, a man of Benjamin, who blew the horn, and said, We have no part in David, nor inheritance in the son of Jesse, every one to his tents, O Israel. Then all the men of Israel separated from David, and followed Sheba the son of Bichri, but the men of Judah rallied to their king from Jordan to Jerusalem. So when David came to his house in Jerusalem, the king took the 10 women, his concubines, whom he had left to guard the house, and put them in a guarded house, and fed them, but he did not possess them, and they were shut up until the day of their death, living like widows. And the king said to Amasa, Summon to me the men of Judah for the 3rd day, and you then present yourself here. And Amasa went to summon Judah, but he lingered beyond the allotted time. And David said to Abishai, Sheba the son of Bichri will do us more harm now than Absalom, therefore take thou the servants of thy lord, and pursue him, lest he find himself strong cities, and escape our eyes. Then went out after him the men of Joab, and the Cherethites, and the Pelethites, and all the mighty men. These left Jerusalem to go after Sheba the son of Bichri. So when they came to the great stone, which is by Gibeon, Amasa came before them, and Joab was girded with his garment which he had put on, and a girdle over it, with a sword fastened at his loins in its scabbard, and as he went forward, his sword fell. And Joab said to Amasa, Is it well, my brother? And Joab took Amasa's beard with his right hand to kiss him. And Amasa did not spare himself from the sword that was in Joab's hand, so that he smote him with it in the 5th rib, and poured out his entrails to the ground, and smote him not the 2nd time, and he died. So Joab and Abishai his brother went after Sheba the son of Bichri. But one of Joab's men stood by him, and said, Whoever loves Joab, and who is for David, let him follow Joab. And Amasa was wreathed in his blood midway, and when that man saw that all the people stood still, he removed Amasa from the path into the field, and threw a cloak over him, because he saw that everyone who came to him stopped. And as he was removed from the way, all the men followed Joab to pursue Sheba the son of Bichri. And he passed through all the tribes of Israel to Abel, and Beth-Maachah, and to all the Barits, and they gathered together, and also followed him. And they came, and besieged him in Abel of Beth-Maachah, and they raised a dam against the city, and it was placed in the trench, and all the people that were with Joab beat the wall, to break it down. Then a wise woman called out from within the city, Here, here, I beseech you, say to Joab, Come here, that I may speak with you. Coming to her, the woman said to her, Are you Joab? And he said, I am. And she said to him, Hear the words of your handmaid. And he said, I hear. Then spake she, saying, Formerly it was said, Surely they asked advice of Abel, and so they resolved. Am I one of the peaceable and faithful in Israel, and you seek to kill a city that is a mother in Israel? Why then would you devour the inheritance of the Lord? Then Joab answered and said, Far, far be it from me that I should do this, that I should devour or destroy. It's not like that, but one man from Mount Ephraim, whose name is Sheba the son of Bichri, raised his hand against the king, against David. Give me only this one, and I will leave the city. Then said the woman to Joab, Behold, his head shall be thrust upon the wall. And the woman, in her wisdom, went to all the people, and they cut off the head of Sheba the son of Bichri, and cast it to Joab. So he sounded the horn, and they withdrew from the city, each to his tent, and Joab returned to Jerusalem to the king. And Joab was over all the host of Israel, and Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, over the Cherethites and over the Pelethites. And Adoram over the tributes, and Jehoshaphat the son of Ahilud was the chronicler. And Seva, the scribe, and Zadok and Abiathar, the priests. And also Ira the Jairite was David's chief officer. 2 Samuel 21. And there was in the days of David a famine of 3 consecutive years, and David inquired of the Lord, and the Lord said unto him, It is because of Saul and his bloodthirsty house, because he slew the Gibeonites. Then the king called the Gibeonites, and spoke to them. Now the Gibeonites were not of the children of Israel, but of the remnant of the Amorites, and the children of Israel had sworn to them. But Saul, in his zeal for the cause of the children of Israel and of Judah, sought to smite them. So David said to the Gibeonites, What do you want me to do for you? And what satisfaction shall I give you, that you may bless the inheritance of the Lord? Then the Gibeonites said to him, It is not for silver or gold that we have a dispute with Saul and his house, nor do we intend to kill anyone in Israel. And he said, What then do you want me to do for you? And they said to the king, The man who destroyed us, and plotted against us so that we would be desolate, so that we could not survive in any part of Israel. Of his sons, give us 7 men, that we may hang them up before the Lord in Gibeah of Saul, the chosen one of the Lord. And the king said, I will give them. But the king spared Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, son of Saul, because of the oath of the Lord, which was between them, between David and Jonathan, son of Saul. But the king took the 2 sons of Rizpah, daughter of Aiah, who had been born to Saul, Armani and Mephibosheth, and also the 5 sons of Michal's sister Saul's daughter, whom she bore by Adriel son of Barzillai the Mahalathite. And he delivered them into the hand of the Gibeonites, who hanged them on the mountain before the Lord, and these 7 fell together, and they were slain in the days of harvest, in the first days, at the beginning of the barley harvest. Then Rizpah, daughter of Aiah, took a sackcloth and spread it over a rock from the beginning of the harvest until the water from heaven fell on them. And she did not let the birds of the air sit on them by day, nor the beasts of the field by night. And it was told to David what Rizpah, daughter of Aiah, Saul's concubine, had done. So David went and took the bones of Saul and the bones of Jonathan his son, from the inhabitants of Jabesh-Gilead, who stole them from the street of Beth-shan, where the Philistines had hung them when they smote Saul in Gilboa. And he brought up from there the bones of Saul and the bones of Jonathan his son, and they also gathered the bones of those hanged. They buried the bones of Saul and of Jonathan his son in the land of Benjamin, in Zelah, in the tomb of Kish their father, and did all that the king had commanded, and after this God was appeased with the earth. The Philistines had more a battle with Israel, and David went down, and his servants with him, and they fought so hard against the Philistines that David was weary. And Ishbi-Benob, who was of the giant's sons, whose spear weighed 300 shekels of copper, and who girded a new sword, intended to smite David. But Abishai the son of Zeruiah helped him, and smote the Philistine, and slew him. Then David's men swore to him, saying, "Thou shalt never again go out with us to battle, lest thou quench the lamp of Israel." And it came to pass after this that there was yet another battle with the Philistines in Gob. Then Sibbecai the Hushathite smote Saph, who was of the giant's sons. There was yet another battle with the Philistines at Gob, and Elhanan the son of Jeroham the Bethlehemite smote Goliath the Gittite, whose spear was the shaft like a weaver's organ. And there was also another battle in Gath, where there was a man of great stature, who had 6 fingers on each hand, and 6 fingers on each foot, 24 in all, and he too was born of the giant. And he reviled Israel, but Jonathan, son of Shimei, David's brother, smote him. These 4 were born to the giant in Gath, and they fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants. 2 Samuel 22. And David spake unto the Lord the words of this song, in the day that the Lord delivered him out of the hand of all his enemies, and out of the hand of Saul. He therefore said, The Lord is my rock, and my stronghold, and my deliverer. God is my rock, in him I will trust, my shield, and the strength of my salvation, my high place, and my refuge. O my Savior, from violence you save me. The Lord, worthy of praise, I will call, and from my enemies I will be delivered. Because the waves of death surrounded me, the torrents of wicked men have haunted me. Ropes of hell have girded me, they found me bonds of death. Being in distress, I called upon the Lord, and cried to my God. He heard my voice from his temple, and my cry reached his ears. Then he shook and the earth shook, the foundations of the heavens moved and shook, because he was angry. Smoke rose from his nostrils, and a devouring fire from his mouth, coals burned from it. And he lowered the heavens, and came down, and a darkness there was under his feet. And he climbed upon a cherub, and flew, and he was seen on the wings of the wind. And for tents he set darkness round about him, gathering of waters, clouds of heaven. By the brightness of his presence coals of fire were kindled. The Lord thundered from heaven, and the Most High uttered his voice. And he shot arrows, and scattered them, thunderbolts, and troubled them. And the depths of the sea appeared, and the foundations of the world were uncovered, by the rebuke of the Lord, by the breath of the wind in his nostrils. From on high he sent and took me, he drew me out of many waters. He delivered me from my mighty enemy, and from those who hated me, because they were stronger than I was. They found me in the day of my calamity, but the Lord became my support. And he brought me out into a spacious place, and delivered me, because he had pleasure in me. The Lord rewarded me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands he has repaid me. Because I have kept the ways of the Lord, and I have not impiously departed from my God. For all his judgments were before me, and from his statutes I have not deviated. But I was sincere before him, and I kept myself from my iniquity. And the Lord rewarded me according to my righteousness, according to my purity in his eyes. With the benign you show yourself benign, with a man of integrity you show yourself perfect. With the pure you show yourself pure, but with the wicked you show yourself rigid. And the afflicted people you deliver, but thine eyes are against the haughty, and thou shalt bring them low. For you, Lord, are my lamp, and the Lord lightens my darkness. Because with you I pass through a squadron, by my God I jump a wall. God's way is perfect, and the word of the Lord refined, and he is the shield of all who trust in him. Why, who is God but the Lord? And who is a rock but our God? God is my fortress and my strength, and he perfectly clears my path. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer, and sets me on my heights. Instruct my hands for battle, so that a copper bow breaks through my arms. You also gave me the shield of your salvation, and by your gentleness you made me great. Thou hast made my steps wide under me, and my toes have not wavered. I pursued my enemies, and defeated them, and never returned until I consumed them. And I consumed them, and I pierced them through, so that they never rose again, but fell under my feet. Because you have girded me with strength for battle, you made those who rose up against me bow down under me. And you gave me the neck of my enemies, of those who hated me, and I destroyed them. They looked, but there was no deliverer, to the Lord, but he did not answer them. Then I ground them like the dust of the earth, like the mud of the streets I trod them and dissipated them. Thou hast also delivered me from the strife of my people, you have kept me as the head of the nations, the people that I did not know will serve me. The sons of strangers were subject to me, hearing my voice, they obeyed me. The children of strangers faint, and having girded themselves, they came out of their hiding places. As the Lord lives, and blessed be my rock, and exalted be God, the rock of my salvation. The God who gives me full vengeance, and subdues the peoples under me. And what takes me away from my enemies, and you exalt me above those who rise up against me, from the violent man you deliver me. Therefore, O Lord, I will praise you among the Gentiles, and I will sing praises to your name. He is the tower of his king's salvation, and shows kindness to his anointed, to David, and to his seed forever. 2 Samuel 23. And these are the last words of David, says David, son of Jesse, and says the man who was lifted up on high, the anointed of the God of Jacob, and the gentle in Psalms of Israel. The Spirit of the Lord spoke by me, and his word is in my mouth. Said the God of Israel, the rock of Israel spoke to me, there will be a righteous one who rules over men, who rules in the fear of God. And it will be like the light of the morning, when the sun rises, the cloudless morning, when by its brightness and rain the grass sprouts from the earth. Though my house is not such with God, yet he hath established an everlasting covenant with me, which shall be well ordered and kept in all things, for all my salvation and all my delight is in him, though he does not yet make it bud. But the children of Belial will all be like thorns that are thrown away, because they cannot be touched with the hand. But whoever touches them will arm himself with iron and the shaft of a spear, and with fire shall be utterly burned in the same place. These are the names of the mighty men that David had: Josabasbeth, son of Tachmoni, the chief of captains. This was Adino the Eznite, who had opposed 800, and slew them at once. And after him Eleazar, the son of Dodo, the son of Aoi, among the 3 mighty men who were with David when they provoked the Philistines who were gathered there to battle, and when the men of Israel withdrew. He arose, and smote the Philistines, until his hand was weary, and his hand clung to the sword, and on that day the Lord wrought a great deliverance, and the people returned to him, only to take the spoil. And after him Shammah the son of Agi the Hararite, when the Philistines were gathered together in a multitude, where there was a piece of land full of lentils, and the people fled from before the Philistines. So he stood in the midst of that piece of land, and defended it, and smote the Philistines, and the Lord wrought a great deliverance. Also 3 of the 30 chiefs went down, and in the time of harvest they came to David, to the cave of Adullam, and the multitude of the Philistines encamped in the valley of Rephaim. David was then in a stronghold, and the garrison of the Philistines in Bethlehem. And David had a desire, and said, I wish I could drink from the water of the cistern of Bethlehem, which is by the gate." Then those 3 mighty men broke through the camp of the Philistines, and drew water from the cistern of Bethlehem, which is by the gate, and took it, and brought it to David, but he would not drink it, but poured it out before the Lord. And he said, "Guard me, O Lord, from doing so. Would I drink the blood of men who risked their lives? So I didn't want to drink it." This did those 3 mighty ones. Also Abishai, brother of Joab, son of Zeruiah, was chief of 3, and he raised his spear against 300 and smote them, and he had name among the 3. Was he not the noblest of these 3? For he was the first of them, but to the first 3 it did not arrive. Also Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, son of a mighty man of Kabzeel, great in works, he smote 2 mighty heroes of Moab, and he went down, and smote a lion in the midst of a pit, in the time of snow. He also smote an Egyptian, a man of honor, and in the Egyptian's hand was a spear, but he went down to him with a staff, and plucked the spear out of the Egyptian's hand, and with it slew him. These things did Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, for which he was named among 3 mighty men. Among the 30 he was the most noble, but he did not reach the first 3, and David made him over his guards. Asahel, Joab's brother, was among the 30, Elhanan, son of Dodo, from Bethlehem. Shammah, Harodite, Elika, Harodite. Helez, Throb, Ira, son of Ichish, a Tekoite. Abizer, an Adatite, Mebunai, Husatite. Zalman, an Ahite, Marai, Netophathite. Eleb, son of Bana, the Netophathite, Ittai, son of Ribai, from Gibeah of the children of Benjamin. Benaiah, Pirathonite, Hidai, from the brook Gash. Abialban, Arbatite, Asmavite, Baramite. Eliabah, Salbanite, the sons of Jashan and Jonathan. Shammah the Hararite, Ahiam the son of Sarah the Ararite. Eliphalet, son of Ashbai, son of a Makathite, Eliam, son of Ahithophel, a Gilonite. Hesrai, Carmelite, Parai, Orbit. Igal, son of Nathan, from Zobah, Bani, Gadada. Zelek, Ammonite, Naharai the Beerothite, who bore the weapons of Joab the son of Zeruiah. Anger, irritates, Gareb, Itrites. Uriah the Hittite, 37 in all. 2 Samuel 24. And the anger of the Lord was kindled again against Israel, and stirred David against them, saying, "Go, number Israel and Judah." So the king said to Joab, captain of the army, which he had with him, "Now go through all the tribes of Israel, from Dan to Beersheba, and number the people, that I may know the number of the people." And Joab said unto the king, "Now let the Lord thy God multiply this people 100 times as much as they now are, and the eyes of my lord the king may see it. But why does my lord the king want this business?" But the king's word prevailed against Joab, and against the captains of the host. So Joab and the captains of the army went out before the king to number the people of Israel. And they passed over Jordan, and they encamped at Aroer, on the right hand of the city which is in the midst of the brook Gad, beside Jazer. And they went to Gilead, into the low country of Hodsi. They also went to Danjon, and around Sidon. And they went to the fortress of Tyre, and to all the cities of the Hivites and Canaanites, and they went out to the south side of Judah, to Beersheba. So they went through all the land, and at the end of 9 months and 20 days they returned to Jerusalem. And Joab gave the king the sum of the number of the numbered people, and there were in Israel 800,000 men of war, who drew the sword, and the men of Judah were 500,000 men. And David's heart grieved after he had numbered the people, and David said to the Lord, "I have sinned greatly in what I have done, but now, O Lord, forgive the iniquity of your servant, because I have acted very foolishly." So when David rose up in the morning, the word of the Lord came to the prophet Gad, David's seer, saying, "Go and say to David, Thus says the Lord, 3 things I offer you, choose one of them, so that you do it." So Gad went to David, and told him, and said unto him, "Wilt thou that 7 years of famine should come upon thee in thy land, or that for 3 months you flee from your enemies, and they pursue you, or that for 3 days there is pestilence in your land? Decide now, and see what answer I shall give to the one who sent me." Then David said to Gad, "I am in great distress, but let us fall into the hand of the Lord, for his mercies are many, but into the hands of men do not fall." Then the Lord sent the plague upon Israel from the morning until the appointed time, and from Dan to Beersheba, 70,000 men of the people died. So when the angel stretched out his hand over Jerusalem to destroy it, the Lord repented of the evil, and he said to the angel that made destruction among the people, "It is enough, now withdraw your hand." And the angel of the Lord was by the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite. And when David saw the angel that smote the people, he spake unto the Lord, saying, Behold, it is I that have sinned, and I that have done wickedly, but these sheep what have they done? Let your hand be against me, and against my father's house. And Gad came that same day to David, and said unto him, Go up, build up an altar unto the Lord in the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite. David went up according to the word of Gad, as the Lord had commanded him. And Araunah looked, and saw the king and his servants coming towards him, so Araunah went out and bowed down to the king with his face to the ground. And Araunah said, Why does my lord the king come to his servant? And David said, To buy this threshing floor from you, to build an altar to the Lord on it, that this punishment may cease from the people. Then said Araunah to David, Take, and offer my lord the king what seems good in his eyes, lo, oxen for the burnt offering, and the threshers, and the oxen's equipment for the wood. All this Araunah gave to the king, and Araunah said to the king, May the Lord your God take pleasure in you. But the king said to Araunah, No, but I will buy it for you at a fair price, for I will not offer burnt offerings to the Lord my God that cost me nothing. So David bought the threshing floor and the oxen for 50 shekels of silver. And there David built an altar unto the Lord, and offered burnt offerings, and peace offerings. So the Lord was appeased with the land, and the chastisement of Israel ceased. Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our channel, leave your like, and make a comment.